Good day, everyone. So, our topic for today is about assessing students with intellectual disabilities.
First is our introduction. Students are identified as having an intellectual disability on the basis of low scores on a standardized IQ test and consistent deficits in one or more adaptive behaviors that adversely affect educational performance for their age and or grade. So these are some of the intellectual disabilities of students with exceptional needs and how we're going to assess them. Adaptive behavior. Two cautions about assessing adaptive behavior. 1. No single adaptive behavior instrument covers all areas of adaptive skills. First is, data are gathered from third-party observers. Next, choose the instrument that will provide the most valid inferences. Lastly, keep in mind that the third parties may be biased in their interpretation. 2. Be careful that a student's cultural or linguistic background does not influence the assessment. First, students may have difficulty functioning in the classroom but not at home. Lastly, adaptive behavior is best evaluated relative to the context in which it occurs. Sensory impairments. Students with vision or hearing deficits may be identified as sensory impaired. Vision difficulties with or without correction, including acuity and eye-hand coordination, a hearing deficit that interferes with educational performance. Speech and language disorders. Students who demonstrate difficulty with communication or a voice impairment are eligible for speech and language services. First, stuttering. Second, impaired articulation. And lastly, difficulties expressing or understanding verbal language. Students with voice impairments have problems with the sound quality of their voices. This adversely affects communication. Physical and health impairments. Students may be diagnosed with a physical limitation that limits their ability to physically move or engage with the classroom learning environment, also referred to as orthopedic impairment. Example given, limb amputation or cerebral palsy. Unless diagnosed with another disability, these impairments typically do not limit intellectual functioning. Specific learning disability. The idea definition of SLD has remained constant. Specific learning disability means a order in one or more of the basic psychological processes involved in understanding or using language, spoken or written, which may manifest itself in an imperfect ability to listen, think, speak, read, write, spell, or to do mathematical calculations. To qualify, a student must have average or above average intelligence and exhibit difficulties with academic tasks. Emotional and behavioral disorders. A student identified with an emotional or behavioral disorder consistently exhibits one or more of the following characteristics to a marked degree that clearly interferes with learning. Systematic observations by the teachers are made for students considered with an emotional or behavioral disorder. Final determination requires consultation with a specialist. Autism is a complex and increasingly prevalent disability. Autism is a complex and increasingly prevalent disability. Students present the characteristics along a spectrum of severity, primarily diagnosed according to criteria established in the DSM-V, usually before age 3. Students with autism demonstrate significant challenges with verbal and nonverbal communication, social interaction that negatively impact their academic performance. Students with milder forms are typically in the general education classroom. Children over the age of 3 can be identified. Teachers may need to make systematic observations and complete a checklist. One of my best examples that I could relate to in this topic is my cousin who has autism. My cousin really suffered from autism. My auntie figured it out when my cousin was 7. He rarely talks with other people and sometimes he has a nervous breakdown. There are some behaviors that are sometimes alarming, such as repetitive behaviors like hand flapping, rocking, jumping, or twirling, constant moving, and hyper behavior, fixations on certain activities or objects. And the most intriguing is he has specific routines or rituals, and he gets upset when a routine is changed, even slightly. So, to cope up with his disabilities, we ensure that he must undergo therapies, and the most important is education. Fortunately, my aunt could provide my cousin with a home-based learning. She hired some teachers that are specialized with children with autism so that my cousin can still learn how to read and write. In short, he was given exceptional reinforcement that he needed. As I've observed with the teacher, she uses early assessment and intervention, has ongoing assessment and monitoring of his everyday progress, focuses on teaching new skills. She is also proactive and she works collaboratively with us so that this is the story of my cousin who happens to have autism. So I hope you have learned something today and thank you for watching.